Imagine for a moment, if you can, that you're enjoying a quiet retirement in a beautiful home located on a peaceful lake. Now imagine that peace shattering as a double murder so brutal, so shocking, shakes the neighborhood to its core and destroys that peace. In May of 2014, an elderly couple missed a long anticipated Kentucky Derby theme party at a neighbor's house. When the neighbor went to check on them, he found a scene that both defied explanation and belief. The local sheriff teamed up with the FBI, and together they gathered a mountain of information and evidence. Yet, just over a decade later, the case remains unsolved. Join me for the baffling ride through the odd mystery story of the Lake Oconee murder of Shirley and Russell Dermond. Russell Dermond, 88, and Shirley Dermond, aged 87, had retired to a $1 million home in the gated community called Great Waters Reynolds on the shore of Lake Oconee, 1 hour east of Atlanta. The couple had been married 67 years at the time, and Russell had been retired for 2 decades from the fast food industry. The banks of the lake are festooned with trees that shade the water. The couple's property was nestled among the trees, blocking the view for most of the neighborhood. Some neighbors had cameras at the time, but most people were worried about boat theft, not murder. And so even if they had cameras, they tended to point those cameras at their boats, at their docks. Until the aftermath of the murder, it wasn't known that the cameras at the entrance gate to the community were not even working. That may not have mattered anyway, as I'll discuss later on in this story. Lastly, about security. The children of the couple reported that they did have a security system, but of course it wasn't set. Keep in mind, in this area, where until this murder there was zero reported crimes, even crimes like burglary, for many years before this incident. So if it makes sense that the couple, while diligent about locking their doors, may not have set their alarm, it's understandable. The couple had 3 adult children, all of whom lived out of state and presented strong alibis during the time of the murder. Subsequently, each subjected themselves to a polygraph and passed. The last time Russell was caught on tape, he picked up a prescription before buying cucumbers and bread. Shirley never missed her weekly bridge game. They didn't seem to have enemies. Their finances seemed to be in order. They made their fortunes in a boring, predictable way, owning Wendy's and Hardee's fast food restaurants. They never flaunted their wealth. They felt safe. They never installed video cameras inside or outside of their home. Brad Dermond, the youngest of their 4 children, at age 55 back in 2018, said his parents were very private people and they would not have been happy to know that he was talking about them. However, at the time, he said he needed to say something, hoping to break someone else's silence and possibly uncovering a clue as to who killed his parents. They were the last people on earth anyone would have expected to end up as a pair of homicide victims. The last time anyone spoke to Russell was May 1st, when he shared a phone call with his son Brad. The couple were due to attend a Kentucky Derby party on May 3rd. Their neighbors got worried when they never showed, but it took 2 more days for someone to head over to their property. When the neighbors finally checked, they found Russell's headless body in the garage. Towels had been tucked around Russell's body to prevent the blood from seeping under the garage door or sliding down into the driveway. His head was gone. Shirley was missing. Gunshot residue on Russell's collar indicated he may have been shot before the killers took off with his head. To this day, Russell's head has never been found. There was no sign of forced entry. Nothing was missing from the house or the couple's bank account. There were several wounds on Russell's hands that indicated Russell may have put up some kind of resistance. There are also some reports that some of Shirley's hair was found near the wounds on Russell's hands. Now, it's quite possible that the assailant may have been tussling with Shirley just prior to attacking Russell, and therefore the transference from one victim to the other. The interior of their house was immaculate. a crime scene that gave up few clues. There were no prints, and only one report that a lampshade appears to have been a kilter. Shirley was known to maintain an impeccable home, and it showed at the time of the incident. Residents of the neighborhood hadn't seen or heard anything unusual on that day. Law enforcement moved quickly. They interviewed the neighbors, they interviewed the family, and thinking at the time that Shirley had been kidnapped, they plastered her face on every billboard in the Atlanta metro area. However, 10 days later, a pair of fishermen found Shirley in the lake miles from their home. She'd been bashed over the head with a blunt object several times, possibly a hammer. The killers then tied 30-pound cinder blocks to Shirley's feet and tossed her into the water. She was fully clothed, and there were no signs of sexual assault. None of the murder weapons have ever been found. The utter absence of any sign of a struggle made police wonder if Russell and Shirley had known their killers. Let's also keep in mind that they were elderly and they might not have been able to put up much of a fuss. Law enforcement also began to suspect that there was more than one killer, although they haven't released all the details that helped them come to that conclusion. Law enforcement pursued every angle they could think of. They questioned 250 individuals. They made the Dermonds' adult children take a polygraph. They reviewed the couple's bank records, opened their safety deposit box, scrutinized their will, and combed through every phone record. They found nothing. A year later, they even reached out to another state when another elderly woman, Lois Colley, aged 83, was found bludgeoned to death on November 9, 2015. At first, the two killings seemed to be connected, but Colley's murder would go on to get solved, and the Dermond murder never would. There was no connection at all. In 2019, a day laborer pled guilty to Colley's murder, admitting he'd bludgeoned Lois with a fire extinguisher when his attempt to claim money from Lois's husband went wrong. The police had initially thought the two crimes were connected because Colley's husband owned a chain of McDonald's restaurants and the ages of the victim were nearly the same. Tips began to dwindle, theories hit dead ends, and the quest for a suspect or even a coherent motive ground the case to a halt. Neighbors said that they thought they saw a man in the driveway near the time when the Dermonds were suspected to be murdered. But if police thought the description credible, they kept it close to their chest. They have not released a composite sketch. How did the killers arrive? No one ever spoke of a vehicle of interest, and Shirley was found in the middle of the lake. The Dermonds didn't own a boat anymore. They'd sold theirs years ago. Does this indicate that the killers arrived by boat and not by car? Does it also indicate that they left the same way? I think it's a reasonable theory, especially since they were holding Shirley prisoner when they left, and they apparently had a head with them. Neither are the sort of things anyone would want to drive down a highway with. The chances of getting pulled over and caught would be exponentially high. Then there's the matter of the beheading. It's not as easy as the movies make it look. To get a clean single cut, you need a sharp sword or axe. The sharper the better, and the aim must also be precise. If the instrument is dull or the aim is poor, it could take the killer multiple strikes to remove the head. And it's not common because the activity is not casual. Or one might conclude the killers either had an expert among them or someone who's devoted enough to their dark act to stand there hacking away at the head until they could pull it off, add it to a container, and take off with it. Either possibility is very disturbing. One of the most baffling aspects of this crime was the utter lack of an apparent motive. Police ruled out robbery quickly, given nothing was missing. Shirley's purse, cell phone, and keys were even all inside the home. Why take Russell's head but not his money? If it wasn't robbery, what was it? If the killer or killers knew the couple, Why did they strike? Were they disgruntled employees out for revenge? Was it a kidnapping and ransom demand gone wrong? While some have suggested the nature of the murders indicates a thrill kill, six psychos out for nothing more than shock value and their twisted idea of a good time, I'm not so keen on this theory. Why go to all the effort of going deep into a gated community and then savagely murder an elderly couple? While a sick act, I don't think the theory of a thrill kill is a strong one, but that's just my opinion. Was it a professional hit? Did the killers take Russell's head because they were trying to provide someone with proof of the murder? Or was taking his head a clear message to someone else? And was Shirley simply collateral damage? Of course, this wasn't the first time murder had touched this little family. Could the Dermonds have been victims of a series of events that started nearly 15 years before their deaths? In 1999, Shirley and Russell's oldest son, Mark Dermond, died while attempting to buy drugs in a seedy Atlanta neighborhood. Could there be a connection? Police say there isn't one, but there could be a wild connection between fast food restaurants and drugs. Recent investigations have found incidences of drugs being sold out of a Burger King drive-thru and smuggling tunnels being built under fast food establishments. Clearly, the fast food industry isn't always as dull and boring as it might otherwise seem. Is it possible that one of Shirley and Russell's old franchise locations got swept into the drug trade, perhaps courtesy of Mark Dermond's old activities? If so, what did Shirley and Russell know that someone didn't want them to share? Or what did someone think that they knew? Of course, connections like this one can be tricky and a little bit reaching. Often investigations turn up facts that look like deep, intense, explanatory connections. Then those facts reveal themselves as nothing more than coincidences. Mark's murder could be one of those. Law enforcement's current party line is that there is no connection. Perhaps this theory is little more than an attempt to impose order where no order exists. The same as the thrill kill theory, just searching for answers where their motive is so elusive. On May 2nd, 2024, Putnam County Sheriff Howard Sills announced that investigators had discovered new DNA on evidence found near Russell's body and had verified that the DNA did not belong to him. Law enforcement promptly sent the DNA off for testing. Meanwhile, FBI Special Agent Andy Smith began using new technology to analyze cell phone data linked to devices that might have been used near the crime scene. Then, Smith told the press that at least one killer should be very nervous. They were also very cautious to remind everyone that the DNA could be that of an investigator at the crime scene. So while this evidence seems promising, law enforcement seems to be cautious around getting overly optimistic about its outcome. We can only hope, right? Both men reiterated that somebody, somewhere, knows something. Perhaps someone who is even remotely concerned about being associated with this heinous crime. They are hoping one of the accomplices breaks and comes forward soon. Perhaps even sooner than expected. The DNA revelation was months ago, and the media has yet to report on any arrests or new breaks in the case. Is it possible that Smith and Sills are closer than they've ever been before? Are they just waiting for the final pieces of the puzzle to fall into place and connect the DNA and the cell phone data to a possible suspect? Or is it the possibility that this heinous crime will ever be solved little more than just wishful thinking? Or a huge desire for justice that can never be realized? Thank you once again for joining me through this terrible true crime. My name is Vince. Of course, I cannot wait to see the comments from you. Do you have a theory about this crime that hasn't been discussed already? Share that in the comments. Also, if you found this story intriguing, you might also find the story of the Solomon family as another strange mystery that still remains unsolved. You can find the link to that video in the top right-hand corner of your screen. Click there to view that story. I appreciate your support. Thank you.